There are villains who were born to become legends, but the script simply decided to throw them away. These are characters who had it all: charisma, power, motivation, and such a well-built backstory that, if their universe were even slightly fair, they would have won. But cinema, especially animated films, always needs to deliver a happy ending. And that's where the best villains end up underestimated, defeated not by the logic of the story, but by the convenience of the screenwriter. Today, we're going to revisit some of these characters who deserved far more than the fate they got. Intelligent, tragic, manipulative, or even relatable villains who were sabotaged by their own movies just so good could triumph in a forced way. Syndrome, also known as Buddy Pine, is one of the most underrated villains ever created by Pixar. His plan is almost perfect, but his ego got in the way. He starts out as a rejected kid, turned away by Mr. Incredible, and channels that frustration not into blind revenge, but into engineering. Years later, that obsessed boy returns as a technological genius, owner of a secret island, an army of soldiers, and a billion-dollar fortune built for one purpose: to end the era of heroes. The brilliance of Syndrome's plan lies in the fact that he's just a human being who is despised by the strongest super. So if he can't be a super, then no one should. He creates omnidroids that kill real heroes, eliminating the strongest from the Golden Age, like Gamma Jack, all to create a world without supers and then defeat his own creations publicly, posing as a savior. That way, when everyone is super, no one is. The problem is that the script couldn't let that happen. Syndrome is defeated by a simple design flaw. His cape gets stuck in a jet turbine. But his downfall really starts earlier, when his own robot turns against him. Pixar wanted to show arrogance turning against its creator, but within the logic of the movie, Syndrome had thought of everything. A villain that smart wouldn't leave a deadly AI without a security protocol. The error exists only to make room for heroism. If Syndrome had won, the world of the Incredibles would have been dominated by technology, a society dependent on machines and gadgets. Randall Boggs, from Monsters Incorporated, is another example of genius turned dark. While Sullivan and Mike work in the traditional way, scaring children for energy, Randall understands that their world is facing an energy crisis, and he decides to innovate. His project is, without exaggeration, revolutionary. A machine capable of extracting screams continuously, without depending on doors, schedules, or controlled fear. The problem is the method. He needs to kidnap children to keep the system running. The idea is both brilliant and macabre. In the end, Randall is trying to solve a global problem and save his world, but through the wrong means. It's the perfect portrait of science without ethics. And that's what makes him so dangerous. He's not driven solely by jealousy of Sullivan. He's a genius who saw the systems collapse before anyone else and tried to act in his own way. His defeat, however, is turned into a joke. An invisible monster, a great fighter who even beat up Sullivan, gets exiled to the human world and is beaten by an old lady with a shovel. Pixar uses humor as a safety valve to end what could have been a much darker story. Randall had insane power and intelligence. Ending that way just doesn't make much sense. When Tai Lung appears in Kung Fu Panda, he isn't just a villain. He's the product of a broken system. Master Shifu raised him since he was a cub, putting all his hopes into making him the Dragon Warrior. Tai Lung mastered every technique and became the greatest fighter of his generation. But when the time came, Oogway denied him the title. Not because he lacked skill, but because he feared what he could become with that power. That decision created resentment, revolt, and a desire for vengeance. Tai Lung represents the student who surpasses his master but never gets the recognition he deserves. His plan, upon escaping prison, is simple and coherent. To prove that he deserves what was taken from him, he destroys an entire fortress, defeats an army, and wipes out the Furious Five. Yet the film decides he should lose to a panda who learned Kung Fu in 3 days. Yes, he underestimates Pa, but still, he had every advantage. If he had won, there would be no moral lesson about the power within. Few Pixar villains are as politically intelligent as Hopper from A Bug's Life. He rules through psychology. He has no superpowers, no high tech, just understanding. He knows that fear is more effective than force. Hopper controls the ants not because he's stronger, but because he's faster at thinking. He knows they outnumber him by millions, and that if they ever realized it, he'd be finished. That's why he keeps the cycle of oppression going. Every year he demands harvests, reinforces hierarchy, and reminds them who's in charge. It's a dictatorship that feels natural, sustained by ignorance and habit. His plan is so effective that for a long time, IT seems unbreakable. But the script needed hope, and Pixar found the most symbolic and convenient solution: a bird. In the end, the villain who controls an entire ecosystem is eaten by a random predator. It's poetic, but too easy. Hopper is the portrait of a villain who understood the world better than the heroes. He knew that real power doesn't come from strength, but from perception. His reign only ends because the script decides the ants need an epiphany. Without that, he would have ruled forever. Few people remember Rise of the Guardians, but Pitch Black is one of the most well-built modern animated villains. He doesn't want to rule the world or destroy anyone. He just wants to be remembered. He's the most existentialist villain of them all, representing fear, oblivion, and loneliness. Pitch understands that people need to fear something to believe in something greater. The problem is that fear has been forgotten. No one believes in him anymore, and he becomes invisible. His plan is to restore balance, or imbalance, by reintroducing fear into children's hearts. It's an amazing metaphor about the power of negative emotions. But the script turns him into a caricature just so the Guardians can shine. When he finally manages to spread fear, he's defeated not by logic, but by optimism. A single child believing again makes everything fall apart. Fear is erased by faith, and Pitch is forgotten once more. If the film had the courage to follow its own philosophy, IT would show that fear is not the opposite of hope. It's what keeps hope alive. Pitch is the villain who speaks the truth no one wants to hear. We only value light because we've known darkness. But, as always, the script needed light to win. From The Incredibles to A Bug's Life, what unites all these villains is a simple pattern. They were too good at being bad. Syndrome and the others represent brilliant, strategic, dangerous minds that the script had to hold back. None of them lost fairly. They were all victims of convenient coincidences, forced morality, or commercial needs. The script fears the victory of evil because evil winning often makes more sense. These villains didn't lose because they failed. They lost because the audience wouldn't accept the alternative. Syndrome was eaten by his own cape. Randall became a joke. Tai Lung lost to a lucky panda. Hopper got eaten by a bird, and Pitch was forgotten. In the end, the lesson is clear. In every great story, the most dangerous villains aren't the ones who want to destroy the world, but the ones who have a plan coherent enough to actually do it. And when that happens, the script has to cheat.